Hello and welcome, and today we are in Kanchanaburi. I arrived here last night and I went and explored a temple and a cave. What we really came here for is to find out more about arguably one of the darkest bits of history from World War II. We're here to find out more about the Burma-Thailand Railway. Today I'll be taking you to iconic locations in relation to the Death Railway, such as Hellfire Pass and the bridge over the River Kwai, to find out more about the dark history of this railway. We're here at the first stop to find out more at Hellfire Pass. But before we head in to the museum and then go and have a look at Hellfire Pass, I'll give you a little bit of context. During World War II, the Japanese Imperial Army forced more than 60,000 Allied prisoners of war and 200,000 Asian civilians to build a 415-kilometre railway. This railway was supposed to link Thailand and Burma with the goal of supplying the Japanese forces in Burma. But its completion came at the cost of a staggering amount of human life and is known as a war crime from Japan in Southeast Asia. Disease, malnutrition and poor living conditions claimed the lives of over 100,000 people, earning the railway the name of the Death Railway. Now at Hellfire Pass, one of the most harrowing sections of the Death Railway. POWs had to cut through solid rock using primitive tools, often working 18-hour shifts. At night, the work site was lit by lanterns, giving it the name Hellfire Pass. It's hard to imagine the horror that must have been endured in this very spot. We're now at the Hellfire Interpretive Centre, which is operated and run by the Australian government. We're going to go in and have a look and find out more about what happened here before heading to the specific spot. So we're starting the tour of the Hellfire Pass Interpretation Centre with this viewpoint. So some fantastic views and lovely to take in, but we're not really here for that. We're now heading in. As you can see, there's lists of names of the people who perished during the construction of this specific part of the Death Railway. You can also hear the sounds of tools being used on the stone. You've got stuff like uncle, friend, nephew. Yeah, so it's already starting pretty sombre. Not all of the people that died during the construction of Hellfire Pass and the Death Railway are documented. This is due to insufficient records kept due to the changing of the occupiers of Thailand. The story of the Death Railway begins in 1942 with the fall of Singapore, which is the largest British surrender in history. Japanese forces overwhelmed British, Australian and Indian troops, capturing over 80,000 Allied soldiers. Japan had thousands of prisoners of war at their disposal. In order to expand their empire across Southeast Asia, Japan needed to build a more reliable supply route, as the one by sea was a long journey which was regularly intercepted or sabotaged by Allied forces. Their solution was the 415-kilometre railway through Thailand and Burma. This would be built on the backs of Allied prisoners of war and forced Asian labourers. You can see here that some of the people captured prisoners of war used their skills to create these pictures of what was going on, probably at great risk. If you were caught with one of these pictures, it really wouldn't end well for you. But now they sit within these museums and also over in Australia to just show what happened. The prisoners of war, like I said, were captured mainly in Singapore and the Dutch East Indies. So British, Dutch, colonial troops were also captured. Australians were taken prisoner in Ambon, New Britain and Timor. And in the Philippines, thousands of Americans surrendered. As well as these prisoners of war, Japan also captured over 200,000 Asian civilians, known as the Ramusha, and the majority of these worked on the Death Railway. Conditions along the railway only got worse during a period called the Speedo period. The Japanese soldiers did not really value the human life and thought that the prisoners of war had no rights under control of the emperor. Some prisoners recall working 150 consecutive days, between 18 and 20-hour days. So at this stage, beatings were very common, and other forms of punishment for minor offences were as well. If you managed to avoid being beaten to death or collapsing from the work, the illness and injury in the camps was rife. The conditions were horrible, and many suffered from malnutrition, malaria and other illnesses. You can see this behind me. This is the amount of rock that one prisoner was supposed to move a day. And down here, this is the amount of food that they were given. Not even a handful of rice. Especially when it comes to the fact that they had very primitive tools. This is just sickening. 30% of the Australian prisoners of war that were captured died during their time here, due to stuff like malnutrition, dysentery, tropical ulcers, and above all, cholera. You can see here an example of what one of the workers, the forced workers from one of the camps looked like, wasted away, clearly ill. And more depictions here. So this is a prisoner of war just returned from Burma, sketched by someone working in a medical centre, I suppose. It's worth noting that even after the Allied POWs were rescued and released, many of the Ramusha, the Asian forced labourers, remained in the rest camps and continued to die from the poor conditions. So there's two walks you can do here at the Hellfire Pass Interpretation Centre. There's a short trail and a longer trail. We only have time to do the short trail today because the longer trail takes around 3 hours. If you did want to do the longer trail, they make you take a walkie-talkie with them because you have to go quite far, and I guess you couldn't be alone for a while walking through what is like a mountainous jungle. So, prisoners of war, mainly captured at the fall of Malay in Singapore, were actually told that they were on their way to a better place with better food. They were actually being sent here. The prisoners of war were sorted into different forces or groups. Half of these groups were sent to Burma to begin construction towards Thailand and vice versa. So some of the tools used to break down these massive bits of rock to be able to provide a place for the railway were stuff like picks, 8 to 10 pound hammers, sticks, shovels. So when you think about the job that they were forced to do, the only reason that the railway got completed within the time that it did was because of the brutality of the Japanese soldiers. It's also worth noting that it wasn't just the rock that had to be cleared. As you can see up here on the hill, there's tons and tons of vegetation that would have to be cleared first. So we are now at the actual site of Hellfire Pass. This was worked on during the Speedo period that I talked about earlier, where prisoners were forced to work long hours late into the night, and they had to illuminate the work area with lanterns, giving it a hellish glow. So that's why it's called Hellfire Pass. Here you can see the memorials left by people from Australia, England, Canada, the Netherlands. It's just crazy. When you see this cliff here and this one here, it was just it continued. There wasn't a gap before, so they had to go through all of that rock with such primitive tools. Got the rail bed here, the rails, so that would have gone all the way through. So a common method of drilling this area was known as the hammer and tap, in which one person would hold a drill and the other person would smack it with their 8 to 10 pound hammer. They would then rotate this and repeat so it didn't get stuck in the rock. I mean, to think that that was what did this. Weird. Horrible thought. So walking through here, it's really, really hard to try and grasp what these men endured. The museum that we passed through earlier is definitely worth a visit, as you can see photos, stories from prisoners, and the tools they used as well. So the marks on the rock wall here show how it was cut. The vertical and horizontal lines are drill marks, and if you look here, you can see a broken compressor drill still embedded in the rock. Further along in the construction of this place, the Japanese forces, desperate to complete it in time, sent in some power tools, but they soon broke. So we're now here at the Hellfire Pass Memorial. So this plaque here was dedicated to Sir Edward Rury Dunlop, which was one of the people who worked as doctors to the sick during their time spent doing the railway. Well, the doctor's jobs obviously was to fight the malaria and the malnutrition and the illness that was happening because of the poor conditions within these rest camps. And they say that their job wasn't to decide who was well enough to work, it was the person who was the least sick out of the two a lot of the times. And doctors would catch regular beatings because of their stubbornness about a worker being too sick to work. Here's the plaque, the memorial plaque. So during 1942 to 1945, in remembrance of all those who suffered and all who died. It's crazy that between such a short time span, I think that the railway was completed in 16 months. So the fact that all of that horror and death happened within such a short time, it's just absolutely harrowing. A lot of the soldiers that worked on this railroad had grown up during the Great Depression, so they were used to feeling hungry. But this was different because it was more permanent and the workload was ridiculous. During the monsoon season, which coincided quite closely with the Speedo season, the roads were not passable. So when the food trucks finally did arrive, all the food was rotten. So after waiting that long for food, what turned up was more maggots than actual food. I'm gonna head back now, but this spot, number 12, this is where, if you're gonna go and carry on, you need to have the walkie-talkie with you. But yeah, it's a 2 or 3 hour walk, and I'd be very interested to do it one day, but we just don't have time today. If you do come here, they've got these audio guides that they give you for free. You just have to leave something like your room key or an ID card as a deposit, and it's very good because you get to hear some of the stories from the people who worked on Hellfire Pass, as well as just a nice complete overview of what happened at each stage. That concludes Hellfire Pass Interpretive Centre. It was, I say, an amazing visit. It was a very interesting visit. It really makes you think about the horrible conditions and the workload of the Allied prisoners, as well as the Asian forced labourers, the slaves. But now we're getting back on the bike and we're driving about an hour to the bridge over the River Kwai, another really significant point of the Death Railway. Although it's an hour, if you're staying in Kanchanaburi town to come to this Hellfire Pass, I definitely recommend it. So we stopped off somewhere for a bite to eat, and now we're about to go to the bridge of the River Kwai, but I rented this scooter just for today, and the woman who I rented it from, she told me that I need to double lock it, meaning the handlebars and then the little hatch that goes over the ignition. And she said the reason that you have to do that is because it's on the border of Burma. People come over and they steal them and take them back to Burma. Kind of makes sense, but very interesting, the difference in Phuket where you just leave it standing there with your helmet just on it. But yeah, anyway, now we're heading over to the bridge over River Kwai. So we're now here at the bridge over the River Kwai, and you can see it's a very popular tourist destination and therefore has markets and food stalls. We're going to have a little walk over. This is the bridge over the River Kwai, made famous by the movie, and although the movie took some creative liberties, this was a vital part of the railway in supplying troops, covering the enabled them to cross the river. In 1945, the Allies recognised its importance and bombed it repeatedly, but it was later rebuilt and now serves as a reminder of the war and the lives lost in the construction. Crossing this bridge, especially after visiting the museum earlier, is a bit of a weird experience. It's full of happy families now, food stalls at the other end and loads of people taking pictures. It's obviously a very beautiful view, but you do have to think about the sheer amount of human suffering that went into this railway. Anyway, I'm probably going to end the vlog there, but I hope you enjoyed it. It was very interesting finding out more about the Death Railway, and if you are coming to Thailand and you're interested in the history, I'd say it's definitely worth you visiting Kanchanaburi just for this.